My guest today is comedian and actor Elon Gold. In addition to being a successful stand-up comedian with 10 appearances on The
That's
Tonight Show.
debatable. That's debatable how successful I am. Half your audience
trying
is
to-
going, Elon Musk, he's a comedian?
Is this not the most Jewish thing? I'm trying to give you so many compliments and you're like, I'm not successful.
Oh, yeah, no. But compliments are always followed by insults. So I don't even, I'm stopping the compliments before we get to the insult. Right?
Yeah. Let me finish your blurb.
You ever go to one of those kiosks at the malls and the Israeli guys with the Dead Sea skin, they get your attention with a compliment, but it's always immediately followed by an insult. So it's like, hey, excuse me, you know, you have a beautiful skin. I'm like, really? But it's not perfect. It's not perfect. You need this product. Trust me, it's not a perfect thing. You have a lot of skin problems. So I'm very weary of compliments, but go ahead.
All right, let's continue.
By the way, plus the audience does not care about my TV credits that I've been on Tonight Show 10 times. There's one credit that they'll be excited about. He's a recurring role in this season's Curb Your Enthusiasm. That
I was going to end
that
with
will
that.
get their attention. Everything else is like, oh, he was on a sitcom with Pam Anderson. Nobody cares.
You've been on Frasier.
That's true. I did do Frasier, a couple other fun shows, Chappelle Show. All right, it's not important. Go ahead. You do your intro. I'll shut up.
I'm going to keep all of that. But anyway, my guest today is comedian and actor Elon Gold. In addition to being a successful stand-up comedian with 10 appearances on The Tonight Show and stand-up specials on Netflix and Amazon Prime, he is also an actor, having appeared in shows like Frasier, Crashing, and most recently, season 11 of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Elon Gold, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Thank you. Good to see you. And, I'm excited. Anytime I have to wake up early on a Sunday morning to talk about anti-Semitism, that gets me out of bed. You know what I mean? I'm like, ooh, this is going to be fun. And is it Ellie or L?
It's Ellie. It's Ellie.
Ellie, because spell it exactly.
E-L-I-E.
E-L-I-E.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, everyone says to me that I spell my name wrong, and then thank God for Elon Musk, and now everybody shuts up.
Right.
It's like, it's really supposed to be E-L-A-N or I-L-A-N. I'm like, don't yell at me. Yell at my parents. You think I had anything to do? You think I was like during my birth certificate signing going, I'm not sure about the spelling on this. You guys, you sure you have this right? Maybe in like 40 years, there'll be a guy who invents an electric car and goes to Mars a lot. Maybe that guy will validate your misspelling. But yes, okay, Ellie. It's Ellie, even though it's spelled a little funky. Got it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm just rolling with it at this point.
Love it.
So for many comedians, such as yourself, telling jokes about potentially difficult, heavy subjects can often be a bit tricky, right? Because if your material deals with a sensitive issue and then you misstep a bit, you could very easily lose the room and today potentially go viral for the wrong reasons. However, if you approach a tough topic and you nail it, there's no better feeling. What is your approach to discussing anti-Semitism in comedy?
Well, that's an excellent question, and there's a lot of parts to that question. The first part is, as a comedian, am I afraid to say something? I'm honestly not afraid to say anything. I'm not afraid about getting canceled. First of all, there's nothing to cancel. I'm not on a show. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid because it's not that I don't care. It's not that I don't respect others and their opinions. It's that I know that I come from the right place and my heart is in the right place. And for me, like, for example, when I'm talking about anti-Semitism, that might offend some people, even some Jews, the way I'm talking about it, but I can't worry about who is this offending. The only thing that concerns me is, am I making a point? Well, first, is it funny? And am I making a point, and is it the right point? And if it comes from my heart, and from my anger about anti-Semitism, so much great comedy comes from anger. I mean, you look at, Chris Rock, Chappelle, you look at even guys like Sam Kinison, who were just angry about marriage, and for him, his anger was marriage is hell, and he was just screaming about it, but it was a genuine thing, and then he was divorced, and then it was cathartic to talk about. for guys like Rock, Chappelle, these are amazing, brilliant comedians who speak the truth. And also it comes from a place of anger and when that happens, when you're really angry about the first of all of comedy is complaining. And I realized that a few years ago. You have to be annoyed about something to joke about it and to want to deride it, mock it, ridicule it. But first it has to annoy you. So what annoys me? Anti-Semitism. It annoys the crap out of me. And I'm angry about it because it's not funny at all. But now I have to find the funny because that's my job. And I happen to be obsessed with finding the funny in hate. Because when you do that, when you find the funny in hate, you get to expose the ignorance of bigotry. And you get to mock these bigots. And one of my favorite new bits that I've been doing lately is mocking those idiots who went to the rallies with the tiki torches, you know, going around going, the Jews will not replace us. And I'm like, the Jews will not replace you. We don't want to replace you. We just want to put braces on you, right? Replace you. We just want to like manage your portfolio. I mean, if we replace you, how are we going to invoice you exactly? I mean, seriously, replace you? We just want to fit you for glasses, okay? And your glasses seem to be fitting quite well, Ellie. We just want to heal you, teach you, make you laugh, represent you in the divorce when she replaces you, you know? And then it's like, and don't they know we're not really good at replacing stuff like appliances and tires? Like, that's why we always have to call them. We couldn't replace you without calling one of you to do it for us, you schmuck. So in that bit, and that bit kills because it's got these funny jokes, but it's making a point. It's like, here are these group of morons walking around with tiki torches going, the Jews will not replace us. And it's like, what is that message even? And as it turns out, it's about immigration, and it's a whole thing that's in their fakakta brains that they think there's some global conspiracy of the Jews trying to replace them, but it's all just nuts, you know? So it's my job now to mock these nut jobs. It's my job to mock nut jobs. And I do it from sort of the right place. Like, I know that I'm in the right and they're dead wrong. Like, you can't justify any sort of racism, homophobia. You're not right. If you hate gays, you're wrong. You shouldn't hate anybody. Okay? But so now it's like, as a comedian, I'm like, okay, I'm obsessed with finding the funny in hate. I'm obsessed with mocking these idiots. Now, how do I go about it? And then there are bits that I do where I literally like do a German accent. And that, you know, you talk about something that's triggering, you know, and the last thing I ever want to do is make, like, let's say a Holocaust survivor is in the audience, or even the son or grandson of one. And to offend one of them would hurt me deeply. So of course it's not my intention to offend, but it is my intention to mock Nazis. And if I remember Mel Brooks once said, because they were like, why do you talk about Nazis so much, and springtime for Hitler, and it's disgusting, you shouldn't do that, it's offensive. And he's like, that's my only weapon against the Nazis. It's with jokes. It's to make fun of them. That's how I fight back. I'm not in the war. I can't fight them. I fight them with my jokes. And that's the same thing for me. And of course, I never set out to offend, but inevitably you're going to offend, one or two people just because that's the nature of the game. But I can't think about that, right? See, when you get offended, let's say I do a dirty joke, okay? Because I can't defend a Holocaust survivor being offended. It's like, you're right, you should be offended. You should be very offended by even hearing like the Nazi German accent. But let's say I do a dirty joke and you're in the audience and you're like, oh, that joke is nasty and it's offensive to me. Well, that's your problem, okay? I have enough problems. I have so many problems. I can't get into you and your problems. If your problem is to be offended because I did some stupid joke like, life is like a penis. It's shorter than you'd like it to be. It gets hard at the worst times. You know, you do a joke like that, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, disgusting. He just said penis. It's like, well, that's your problem. You're offended by the word penis? You know, a lot of us have them. And it's okay to talk about, you know, anatomy. It's not really like disgusting. It's not really pornographic. It's just an analogy involving a body part. If you're offended by that, that's your problem. With anti-Semitism and, you know, with an area as sensitive as that, now we're not talking about sex. We're talking about something where people are getting killed over to this day, you know, and for thousands of years. And I do make it a point not to do any Holocaust jokes. I don't do, you know, in my act for 20 plus years, there's nothing funny about it. And that's not even, you know, a topic I would ever want to bring up. However, if Whoopi Goldberg brings it up and says something idiotic, like the Holocaust isn't about race, I'm going to say, oh, really, Whoopi? The Holocaust isn't about race? Yeah, neither is NASCAR. You know what NASCAR is over there, right? It's
Yes,
a racing.
yeah.
Yeah, all right. You know, and I'm going to do jokes like, oh, you know, the Holocaust isn't about race. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what my great grandparents heard in the camps. By the way, this is not about race. This has nothing to do with race. You Jews are always jumping to conclusions. This is not about race, not one iota. And I don't even know what an iota means. And again, I'm doing the accent. I'm mocking Nazis. But it's not, the joke isn't, God forbid, on the victims. It's not even on the Holocaust. It's on Whoopi and it's on the Nazis, okay? It's on the bad guys. Whoopi's not a bad girl, guy. She's not a bad anything. She said something bad and wrong, and it's my job to correct it with jokes. The Nazis are bad guys. They're the ultimate horrible, evil monsters, you know, there's the most subhuman creatures ever to walk the face of the earth. So I'm going to make fun of them. And again, that's not a Holocaust joke. That's a Whoopi/Nazi joke. You know what I mean? And as a comedian, I will make that distinction. Whereas I'm not about to make Holocaust jokes, but I'm also not going to ignore this blatant anti-Semitism, even if she didn't intend to be anti-Semitic. It is such a hurtful comment that, forget about offending. Again, if you're offended, who cares? You're offended, that's your problem. It's more than offensive. It's ignorant and it's dangerous and it discounts our history and the 6 million. And you can't say things like that because of the danger of more genocides taking place, and not just against Jews, against any genocides. You can't discount a genocide with the dumbest comment like the Holocaust wasn't about race. It's like, oh, okay, you know, what was another joke I had? Oh, she said that it was white people fighting other white people, which again, so loaded, so incorrect, as if we were just fighting back, as if we were white. And I have another joke about that. Jews, we all, you know, originate from Israel. We all come from the Middle East. And then we were expelled out of every, you know, Arab country, out of every country in Europe, Spain, Spanish Inquisition, Crusades, everything. So we wound up going all around the world. But we emanate from Israel, and we're not white. And I say this, I go, I'm not white, okay? I'm a white guy the way almond milk is milk. It's in the right color scheme, but you know, it's non-dairy. I'm pareve. I'm off-white. It's a ridiculous thing to say I'm a white guy. So she said, it's white people fighting other white people. I'm like, no, Whoopi, I think you're mistaking the Holocaust with the Real Housewives of Bel-Air. That's white people fighting other white people. So to me, I have to say something about this. I have, it's an impulse. I can't just ignore it. And by the way, when she said it, again, I wasn't offended by it. I just said to myself, ooh, I have to correct that error, that grave, unbelievable error. And the only way, my only weapon, is jokes. How was that for an answer? It was about 20 minutes. Sorry.
It was absolutely fantastic. That was all we wanted, really. No, you mentioned.
Can we go now then? It's a Sunday. I want to go play pickleball. Is pickleball not the most Jewish sport ever? It's like tennis, but without all that moving around. I don't need to be running around from this side of court to that side. If you just stand there, you just sort of hit the ball, and it's pickle. A pickle is the most Jewish thing on earth. If it was a half sour pickleball game, that would be perfectly Jewish. So I have a pickleball game to go. Are we still talking about hatred? Go ahead.
We are, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, we're still in this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, as a moment ago, you mentioned that you've been going for 20 plus years. And I'm wondering how far into your career did you start to feel comfortable talking about anti Semitism? Or were you comfortable talking about it from the start?
That's another great question. You're full of great questions. That's a great question because the comedian's job, besides being funny, is to find their voice, right? And finding my voice was a journey of, I would say, at least 15 years. First of all, for the first decade of doing stand up, not only did I not find my voice, I didn't have a voice. I literally just did impressions. And I hid behind all these characters and impressions and never spoke as myself. So I would do all these impressions, and it was like, I don't have to give any opinions. I don't, talk about my life, whether I'm married, whether I have kids. It wasn't that kind of comedy. It was like I was basically just doing like a Vegas act of just one impression after the other. Then I started getting away from impressions and started talking as me. And my friend Neil Brennan, who co-created Chappelle Show with Dave, and Dave, Neil, and I go way back. We like all started together, in New York. He said to me, "You need to be writing what you care about. Write what you care about." And I started really letting that sink in, and you start really going deep of like, what do I care about? What do I care about? As it turns out, I care about all of humanity. I care specifically about my people. I care about our homeland. I care about Israel. I care about my family. Oh, okay, I'm going to start talking about my wife and kids. And that was such a gradual, slow process. But it became the sort of thing where, like, my manager said, like, you realize you're becoming like the Chris Rock of Jews, where you're sort of this voice of this generation of Jews that, need a comedic voice to stand up for them, to defend them, and to just represent them. And there are a bunch of Jewish comedians. I not only identify as Jewish, but I talk about it a lot. Everybody thinks there was that moment in Curb where after my first scene with LD and Jeff, they walk out of the office and Larry turns to Jeff, goes, "Did that guy ever do stand up?" And Jeff goes, "I don't know, but if he did, he was probably terrible." I know, he kept leaning on the Jew thing, Jew this, Jew that, which was my character, and they told me to do that. And the meta thing is that they could have been talking about me. They weren't. Any actor that would have played that role, they would have done that scene too. But it's hilarious that I happen to be a comedian that always talks about Jewish stuff. I try not to lean on it as a crutch or as a punchline, but I speak from the heart, and I speak about our people and our experience and our cultures, traditions, rituals. And again, I don't mock and I don't make fun, but I poke fun at all sorts of things, from the idiosyncrasies of, learning the Talmud and all the arguments in there, which I made in my sort of Christmas tree bit, which went viral globally around the world, millions of views. And most people loved it, and most people were inspired by that bit and said, "Wow, I really want to learn Talmud now because of that." And everyone knows that, again, it came from a good place and a learned place. I learned Talmud. I grew up learning it, and to this day, I'll open a Talmud every now and then. It wasn't about ridicule and mock. That was about poking fun of, look how they get into all the minutia and the details. But of course, there were a few rabbis that were offended. He's mocking the Talmud. How dare he? The nerve of him to make a joke about the beautiful Gemara and all of our literature. It's like, no, no, no. This is what I do. I get paid to just, poke fun at things, and I'm gonna poke fun at Judaism because that's what I am. and it's my lived experience. That's all I got, really. It's all I got. Like I said, it's that and marriage and being a dad and a husband. It's like, what else am I going to make fun of? So, did that answer your question? Yes. When I found my voice, I really tapped into it. And again, it was a lot of my own little self-discovery and a lot of ruminating and self-reflection and just really deep thinking. And then my manager, Willie Mercer, really encouraging me. And, one time he also said to me, he goes, "You have great material about relationships. You have great material about politics. You have great material about everyday life, but nobody has better material about being Jewish than you. And that's what you have to focus on. That's what you have to lean into. Just that's your forte. That's where you shine. When you talk about your lived Jewish experience, there's no one in the game right now. Even the late, great Jackie Mason, who was the best, who was better than I'll ever be, he, as brilliant and amazing as he was, never went really, really deep into certain like rituals. He would never do a bit about the Talmud, about Gemara. He would do more sort of cultural difference between Jews and Gentiles and that sort of stuff that was hilarious and like no one's ever heard before. No one's ever sounded that Jewish and talked about Jews in that way that was like, oh my God, he's talking about us. That's why everybody loved it. It was like, he's talking about us. This is crazy. But even the late, great Jackie never went as deep as I tend to go. And again, and I have two acts. I have an act that I do like tonight. I'm doing a fundraiser for a Jewish school, and I'm going to go really deep and talk about stuff that I didn't do last night at the Laugh Factory, which was probably 80% non-Jewish audience, where I talk about being Jewish, but it's not the focus, and I'm not going deep. I'm not doing bits about Pesach, or I'm not doing bits about I put on tefillin today, and boy, it's fun to get wrapped in leather, isn't I'm not doing that because they'll be like, what, you put on what today? What? I don't get it. So I do go deep, and sometimes even in front of an audience that's mixed or predominantly not Jewish, I'll still go a little deeper than you'd expect and just sort of hope for the best and hope that, oh yeah, I know what a Seder is. I mean, even Sebastian, who's one of the top comedians now, another guy who's just an old friend and has this crazy meteoric rise where I remember him kvetching to me about 5 years ago saying like, I can't get arrested, I can't do it, and now he's selling out Madison Square Garden faster than any comedian in history. Even he did a bit about the Seder and about Haggadahs. They're passing out pamphlets. Are you kidding? Where's the bread? Give me some bread. And it's like, I do a terrible Sebastian. But anyway, so if Sebastian's not afraid to go that deep culturally into our heritage and our customs and our holidays, why should I be? So I'm not. And now that I finally found my voice, and again, it took years to get out of that, just to swim out of those impressions and just like claw my way out of all that, find my voice, and then finally talk about what I care about.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, as you've said, you do have a very strong Jewish faith to the point where you don't work on Shabbat, which I thought was very interesting.
We call it modern Orthodox. And after all these years, I finally figured out what modern means in modern Orthodox. It means not so. It's the nicer way of saying I'm not so Orthodox. You know what I mean? Like, right. It'd be great if there are other areas in life where you have the nicer way of saying things. Like you go on a blind date. What's she like? Oh, she's smart and she's funny. What does she look like? She's modern, pretty. Oh, okay. So that's my way. That's all of our way of saying we're not that Orthodox, but we're modern. We're into it. We keep Shabbat, we keep kosher and all that. But modern, it's not to the letter of the law. We're not perfectly religious. Like I say, in my act, I say my Jewish act, I say I don't consider myself religious. I'm observant. I observe so many of our holidays and customs and all that. I'm not religious. My rabbi is religious. My Zaidi, my grandfather, he was very religious. My Zaidi was so religious he had 2 toilets, one for meat, one for dairy. That's commitment that you don't see nowadays. So, and that obviously that's just a joke, but it also says something about who I am, that like I don't like to even call myself a religious person, because then you're held to this higher standard, and then it's like, okay, if you ever see me eating like salad at a non-kosher place, I thought you were religious. I told you I'm modern. I'm not so. So, but I'm into it, and I'm into all of it, and I do put on tefillin. And I do, observe so much of our laws and our customs, and I love it. I love keeping. To me, tradition is everything. Keeping the heritage alive is everything.
Well, I mean, it's a true testament to your faith, because not working on Shabbat means you don't work on Friday nights, which is a big night for comedy. And I'm wondering, like, was that a hard decision to make, or was it? How did you come to that decision that no matter what, I'm not working Friday nights?
Well, I didn't start with the no matter what. I started in my 20s going, I may have to bend the rules a little bit here to get where I am, in a place where I can sort of make decisions and say, hey guys, I can't work on Friday night. But when you're like doing a guest star on something like Frasier and you're doing that, you tend to make justifications and go, well, I'll make this sacrifice now, and then in the future I'll be in a better position to not. So there were times, I remember the first series I ever did, I was a part of a cast of a show that nobody heard of. It was on ABC here in America called She TV. It was like reverse Saturday Night Live. It was featuring predominantly women, female cast members, and then I was one of the couple of guys there. Whereas SNL used to be always like reverse. It was like 10 guys, and then a couple of women. So this was like the Saturday Night Live for women. And it was a summer sketch show, and it was going to be taped on Friday night. So I got an apartment next door to the studio, and I remember climbing over the wall, like I would do the taping, and it would go into Friday night like 9, 10 p.m. And I'd climb back over the wall, go to my apartment, meet my wife. We'd make Shabbat dinner. Then we were a little late, and I said one day I'll be on time. One day, and now I keep it. Now I very careful about time. And by the way, that's another one of my favorite bits that your audience can Google. Jews are the only people. The Jewish calendar, it's the only calendar with minutes on it. You look at any calendar, there's months, there's weeks, there's no minutes, right? You open like an American calendar, you'll see like, oh, July 4th. It's not going to say starts at 5:48, ends the next day at 6:52, right? Nobody in history has ever said, what time is Christmas this year? Oh, tree lighting is 4:31. So and that's a fun little observation. I grew up with on that fridge was a calendar that had minutes. It had times. It was like crazy, like 6:29. Like what? 6:29? Why not just say 6:30? Well, now I keep Shabbos. If it starts at 6:29, I'm ready at 6:29. And you cut to a few years later, and my first sitcom, which I did with the great Gene Smart, who's now winning Emmys every year, deservedly so, and the late, great Dennis Farina and Bonnie Somerville. I did a show called In-Laws on NBC. And speaking of Frasier, Kelsey actually was the executive producer, directed the pilot. And that was a show that I was a producer on, and I was, one of the main stars. So I said to them, the average sitcom films on Friday night in front of a live audience. And I said, I'm Sabbath observant. Let's do this any other night of the week. And they said, okay, how about Tuesdays? I went, great. So we just adjusted the schedule. So and again, everyone has their own journey, journey in observance. I'm still on the journey. There's a phrase that says Ma'alin bekodesh ve'ein moridin, which means you should always try to rise in holiness and go up and not go back and not revert to old. So I'm always I'm striving to be more and do more. But I grew up observant, and I love, like I said, I love keeping it. Every time I take a sip of this, the audience, if they're watching this, is wondering, what on earth is he drinking on a Sunday morning? It's kombucha, ladies and gentlemen. It's kombucha.
How is it? Good?
Fantastic.
Good. I also want to ask, why do you as a Jewish comedian think that there are so many Jewish comedians? There's such a rich history of Jewish comedy.
Well, I have an answer for that I talk about on stage. It's very simple, because so many of us found out, wait a second, we could get paid to complain. I was complaining anyway. But you're going to pay me to stand on stage? That's, like I said, it's all of comedy. Right? You complain about your wife. That's what I do. I complain about my wife, my kids, my president, right? And you know what? None of them are ever there when I'm complaining about them, so it's okay. And and it's the kind of thing where, so the joke is, yeah, you get paid to complain, and the only thing we enjoy more than complaining is arguing. That's why there are even more Jewish lawyers, right? Because those the Jewish lawyers, when they found out about that, they were like, wait. So all I got to do is show up, argue, and whether or not I win or lose the argument, I still get paid. Yep, and you also get to file a complaint. Oh, this is a dream job for a Jew. It's a dream Jew job. Worst job for a Jew, being a therapist. Because now you just sit in your office all day. People come in one after the other. They complain to you. And you can't complain back. You can't sit there and be like, oh, you think you have problems. Listen to this. Most Jews, most black people, you hang out, everyone's just laughing and making jokes. The Irish also have a brilliant sense of, that's why so many great comedy writers, from all the great SNL writers like Jim Downey, Michael O'Donoghue, to Conan O'Brien, brilliant Irish comedy writing minds. It comes from that, it's almost a cultural thing, and it just feels like a natural way to make a living by kvetching.
Hello, thank you very much for watching. If you're enjoying this interview, please like the video below and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of Podcast Against Antisemitism. Now, back to the podcast. So far, we've spoken a lot about comedy, but to get a bit more serious, you have previously spoken about experiencing anti-Semitism firsthand in an incident in 2014. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, anyone can Google that, and I don't want to rehash, not because it's too traumatic to talk about. It was a lot of trauma, especially for my children, who left the scene just crying and couldn't walk that same block, which was a few blocks from my house, for months without being scared and nervous. I don't want to rehash it because people just have to Google Elon Gold, a hate incident, and they will hear exactly what happened, and all the details that we don't want to have to go through now, because it's just sort of feels redundant, and I've talked about it a lot. But please do Google it, because I wrote that piece not to tell our story, which again was a harrowing one. We never experienced that level of anti-Semitism in Los Angeles, where we felt our lives being threatened with a big black Mercedes SUV pulling up to us, and 4 Middle Eastern guys in it. One guy gets out, starts yelling at my kids, I hope your children die, yelling at me also, I hope your children die, just like you're killing children in Gaza. And, he stepped out of his car, and we're like, what's next here? Is he going to shoot us, stab us, hit us? We had no idea. So it was so frightening and scary in that moment. But the reason that I wrote this piece, and I was like up all night the next night, so angry and shocked that this could happen. Everyone hears about anti-Semitism, and we always hear about verbal or physical attacks. And we sure know our history of crusades and pogroms and inquisitions and Holocaust. But that was then. People don't hate Jews anymore, do they? Turns out right on the streets of Los Angeles, around the corner, they're yelling at a nice, innocent Jewish family who's never harmed anybody, who's, they have no idea, what my level of Israel advocacy is. Happens to be, I am an advocate to Israel and always will be. But I could be one of those Jews that doesn't care about Israel. Like I didn't until I was 30. I didn't really care about it. My mother was born in Israel. And yet I was just like, yeah, I know. That's where we all come from, and Judea. And I get the history. But I didn't think about it or read about it or care about it. I knew I was there once, when I was 12, and I was like, oh, it's a cool, nice place. I'd like to go back. I didn't care about it until I hit 30 and there was that first intifada and they were blowing up buses and cafes and pizza stores. And I went, wait, why are Jews being murdered again? Like one after the other, just in these crazy attacks. And then I just did a deep dive and started doing, my research and the history of the conflict, the history of Israel. I started reading so much about it. And then I became passionate and an ardent Zionist and proud to say that. And so, but they don't know. I could be one of those Jews that don't care about Israel. And then they're attacking me as if I have anything to do with what's going on over there. It's as insane as when those horrible, evil people would attack Asians here in America or around the world because there was a lab leak in Wuhan, China, and that's all of Asians' faults. Let's beat up an Asian. And that's the sick mind. That's the twisted, hateful mind of a racist, of an anti Semite, of a homophobe. You connect everyone that has nothing to do with anything to somehow because it came from there and those people were used to be from there or their cousins, or it's like a crazy thing. So to be attacked was nuts. But I didn't write that piece to recount the story, although I wanted people to know. It was sort of like a wake up call and a warning. We're not really safe anywhere. And that could have turned into a violent attack. And it was, the scariest thing that my kids had to go through, to feel their lives threatened. Why do they want to kill us? Why are they hoping we die? That's a crazy thing for an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old. So I wanted to tell a story, but the main point of writing that piece was to make the case for Israel. And it was during this Gaza conflict, another unprovoked war where Israel just wants to live in peace. And then Hamas started, shooting rockets at innocent Israelis. Am I talking too much?
No. So, no. Very, very interesting. And you touched upon Hamas, and we know that whenever there's a conflict between Hamas and Israel, Jews across the world end up paying the price. We saw this last May when there was a conflict then, and a lot of there were a lot of anti-Semitic incidents in America, including LA, where you live right now. Some Jews got attacked outside of a sushi bar, and that went quite viral. When you see this, I mean, what are you thinking? Do you ever have thoughts about what is the future of American Jewry?
I'm thinking, now I know how the Holocaust happened. It's like, people just start believing the lies and then they just start attacking innocent Jews. And I see it. People are so quick to hate, and not just Jews. Again, racism has been around forever. And people are so quick to just jump on the hate bandwagon. And then you have these violent people who actually want to do something about it, who think it's a noble cause.
Right, right. But what's so bizarre to me is how traditional
And
safe
it's
havens
affected globally. Right.
globally and safe havens for Jews like LA and New York. That's crazy.
It is crazy, and that's when anti-Semitism rears its ugly head. All anti-Semitism and all anti-Semites need is a reason. It could be a reason based in zero reality, like they did in Germany. They're vermins, and yeah, we need to stop them. Whatever they killed Jesus. No, the Romans killed Jesus. But they did? Let's kill them. They killed Jesus? Let's kill them. No, we didn't kill Jesus. But if you believe we killed Jesus, then you have a reason. Then you have a cause. We're going to kill the people who killed them, Jesus. We're going to kill them. And like you just said, it is bizarre, but I understand it. That why Jews in New York and Miami and everywhere, UK certainly, are being attacked because of what's going on over there. And it's infuriating. But all they need is an excuse. Anti-Semites, they just need give me an excuse. A bully just needs an excuse to bully.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it. I really want to thank you for your time. Before I let you go, I would be remiss if I did not plug your latest venture, which is your role in Curb Your Enthusiasm season 11.
Thank you. And it's funny that you say that. Season 11, I have a recurring role, and you preface it by saying, before I let you go, And when I saw Larry on the set my first day, I came over to him. We were talking. I was like, he said to me, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "Not yet, because we're going to have lunch first and then we're filming later in the day." And he goes, "Oh, you should be nervous. You should be nervous. You should be nervous." And I go, "No, no, no. I will be nervous. I will be very nervous." Like right before I go, you know how when you do stand up and you have a gig at night and you start getting nervous at like 5 p.m. He goes, "No, I wake up nervous. If I have a gig, if I have a show, I wake up." I'm like, "Well, okay, the big ones, yeah, I do wake up and run right to the toilet. I do wake up nervous for the big gigs. And this is a big gig, believe me. But no, not nervous yet. I'm not nervous yet. And I will be, though." Turns out I was very nervous until right before shooting. He got up out of his chair, came over to me and said, "I just want you to know, until the two of us are happy with this first scene here, we'll keep going. So just keep going until we're both." And that just put me at ease. And I have this weird thing where in high pressure situations, once the camera rolls or I hit the stage, I just completely relax. It's a weird thing. I'll be a nervous wreck before and then that. But then he said to me after that conversation, I said, "Okay, well, thanks." And I go, "I'm going to let you go." And he goes, "Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're going to allow me to go. Oh, what would I do if you didn't?" "Yes, I will give you permission at this moment to go. I'm going to let you go." "Oh, what would I do if not for your granting my permission to let me go?" So it's funny whenever you say it or whenever I hear, "I'm going to let you go," when you just said it, it just makes me think of Larry. And I go, "I'm never saying that again. I'm going to let you go."
We touched upon your character earlier, but you have a very funny character. You play Jake Bloom, the head of Hulu, and you use a lot of Yiddish and Jewish mannerisms, which annoys Larry David so much. How did this character come about, and how did you prepare for this role? Did you have to prepare for the role?
I prepared my whole life for this role, but they just really wanted it to be a guy who leans in on the Jew stuff a little too much. And that's why in the first scene when I leave, when they leave my office, they go, "Did that guy ever do stand up? I don't know, but if he did, he would be terrible. Everything is Jew this, Jew that." And in a meeting once with Larry, he once told me, "I don't like comedians who say Jew too much, like who just lean on it too much, use it as a punchline." And it's funny because I am such a Jewish comedian, talk about being Jewish and the Jewish experience so much, but I also try not to use it as a punchline, the word Jew, or you know what I mean? And I try to really just, take great observations about living the Jewish life and poke fun at that. But when you do use the word as a punchline and you do it every other bit is Jew, 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 that annoys. I said to Larry, I agree. It annoys me too. And it was kind of meta because they leave going, "Did that guy ever do stand up?" And it's like, I do stand up. The real guy does stand up. But the character was just, a guy who way too Jewy, even for Larry, who is so Jewish and proud of being Jewish, not that into the religion at all. Like, doesn't really keep a lot of the stuff that the customs and rituals, but loves all things Jewish, and like me, loves to poke fun at ourselves, loves to poke fun at everything from our traditions to our holidays to our laws, our rituals. And but I do it with love, and so does LD. He does it with love. He has a love for his own people. But our job is to make fun of everything, is to make fun of, and we start with ourselves. You start with yourself. So they just wanted this character of this executive to just be way too Jewy, even for Larry, and where it annoys him. So they said, as throw in as much as you can, any terms, and when I said, "Let's talk tachlis," they were like, "What? What?" They both literally said, when they said cut, they were like, "What is tachlis?" Larry and Jeff did not know what tachlis is, which is, real talk. And it was fun. And it was the role I've been preparing for my whole life, because I do live a very, very Jewy life. But like proud of it. And also I keep a lot of I'm kosher and I keep Shabbat and all that stuff. I love tradition, and it's a great way to do, to bring up a family with these traditions that are thousands of years old and apply to this day more than ever, like the Sabbath. The fact that I don't My kids aren't like this, staring at their phones on Friday night dinner. It's the only time we engage and interact and have conversations, and they're not just scrolling and TikToking and dancing. It's a wreck every other day in my house. Shabbat, no electricity. You put your phone away. We have dinner and we enjoy ourselves. So I love tradition. I actually feel bad for people who don't keep a lot of our customs.
That's beautiful. Elon Gold, I really want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Before you go,
I
what have you
appreciate you
got
having
going
me.
on? What have you got going on, and where can people find you?
Absolutely nothing. You would think a guy who just came off a stellar appearance, three episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm, would just have offers up the wazoo. I've got nothing going on. No, I'm working on my next stand-up special, and that I actually want to film in Israel, which I'm excited about.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
and I'm working on. I just wrote a pilot, and we're trying to get that going, and just stand up everywhere, off to Miami, and then I got a lot of gigs. You could follow me on Instagram at Elon Gold, ELONGOLD, and I always post where I am. Just did sold out shows in New York, and I'm always running around doing shows. We're always running around. That's one of the jokes. Jews are always on the run, but never on a run. You know what I mean? We're not big runners, and we're always metaphorically running. I got to run to the store. Oh, I'm running late. I'm running behind. We're always talking about running, but never actually running. But anyway, more on that later. But I really appreciate you. And this is a whole podcast dedicated to not to anti-Semitism, to being against anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Imagine a podcast for anti-Semitism. That's the podcast I should go on. Hi, welcome to the podcast for anti-Semitism. And then I would go on and go, you idiots, you're for hatred? My goodness. But no, this is the one against it. That's why I appeared here. But I do have to go because I'll be on the podcast for anti-Semitism in about a half hour.
Okay. Elon Gold, thank you so much.
Thank you.
L'chaim.
Keep up the great work.